All right, Chris. Sliding out of QB1 is Bryce Young. Sliding in is the red rifle.
And we didn't even need baby oil to do it. You know, who's having the worst week right now? P. Diddy or Bryce Young? Bryce Young gets to keep his bottles of baby oil, so maybe he's having a better week. Who knows?
You know what? Let's get this sucker started.
Slide, slippity slide.
Get dialed in, Panthers fans. Here comes an in-depth look at your team. Exclusive interviews. Locker room insight.
Ready?
Let's huddle up.
Let's just do it, okay?
For Panthers Playbook, driven by Carolina Ford Dealers. Here are your hosts, Dennis Cox and Chris Lea.
Welcome back to another episode of Panthers Playbook. That's Chris Lea, Dennis Cox here with you. We're getting you set ready for the first start of the Dave Canales era with Andy Dalton here on Panthers Playbook. So leave your thoughts in the comments section down below on, is Bryce Young, is he going to come back and play for the Panthers at some point? Let us know in the comments section here on Panthers Playbook. Sponsored by friends at Carolina Ford Dealers. See your Carolina Ford dealer today for a new F-150 on your team. It's game on. Again, see your Carolina Ford dealer today, Chris. Now, that's the big question this week going forward is, what is the future at quarterback? We know what it is right now this week. It's Andy Dalton. But the question is, are you going to hold on to Bryce? Are you going to try and, hey, just kind of reset for a few weeks, then bring you back? It's a major question the organization has to answer, and they got to figure out that answer as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think I want to definitely have a conversation about Bryce in particular, but as far as your question with the Carolina Panthers, it kind of goes back to where, like, what I was saying, what we said before he was benched. If you bench him at any point during the season, you're essentially saying he's over. And the reason why we said that is based off of conventional wisdom. Any other number one overall pick who's already had 18 starts, if you go ahead and bench them, then you're talking about like anybody, Zach Wilson, Baker Mayfield, whomever else, just throughout this course of history, the team that drafted you eventually is going to move on from you. Dave Canales basically kind of, sort of in his own way said, nah, we want Bryce to be around. We feel like he could still contribute, and we still believe in him. That's kind of what he said. It wasn't verbatim. I'm not sure if I believe him. I'm not saying I don't believe him. I'm not saying I do believe him. It could fall somewhere in the middle. I think the wild card here is David Tepper. Whatever ends up David Tepper wants to do, however the wind blows for David Tepper, that's where he's going to go that particular day. But listening to a few people, Baker Mayfield, Steve Smith Sr., Richard Sherman, there's a lot of people that kind of feel like this actually could be a good thing for Bryce. And when I was listening to it, what made me think of it is I thought about it like this. Let's say you take last year and just throw it out.
Yeah.
If this year is his rookie year, and we only saw really 2 starts with an actual NFL offensive line and receivers, and he looked that bad, then what needed to happen from the beginning, going back to last year, is that Andy Dalton needed to start, Bryce Young needed to stay and develop.
Yeah.
There's some people who just can't come out and throw for 400 yards in their first NFL game like Cam Newton.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. As Panthers fans, we need to stop holding Bryce to that Cam Newton standard. He's not going to be that.
No.
He could be better in some ways, but he's not going to be that. And so that's one of those things that we just kind of have to be careful with. So I don't know. Who knows? But as far as the Panthers, I think we just need to just get past this year and then see what happens from there.
In terms of like the Cam, no, he's not physically going to be what Cam was, but I think what Panthers fans were hoping was that he would have the franchise impact of Cam. You don't make all those assets or use all those assets to move up to number one to draft a guy if he's not going to have that same level of franchise impact that we saw with Cam. Again,
he still could. He still could at some point.
Potentially, but there's nothing right now that kind of gives us any sort of hope based off what we've seen in him in a Panther uniform as of right now. So this is a major point, I think, for this organization, because I know you and I, we can hash back about Stroud or whomever they wanted to draft or whatever it might be, and all the decisions that they've made leading up to drafting Bryce Young, from getting rid of Cam, to Bridgewater, to Darnold, to Baker Mayfield, to drafting Matt Corral, to drafting Bryce Young, all those different things. We can rehash all that stuff in the past, but the question is now, I think this is actually really, again, on not only David Tepper, but for you, Dan Morgan, as a general manager, with what you have now, what are you going to do moving forward? We could think about all in the past. What are you now doing going forward in terms of what your quarterback, who's it going to be? Or are you going to all right, let's try and build a roster before we get a quarterback? The problem with the Panthers has been, Chris, over the last few years, all those guys I mentioned, they've been chasing. They're chasing losses. For anybody that does betting or gambling or whatever it might be, they always say never chase your losses. And that's exactly what the Carolina Panthers have been doing since they let Cam Newton go back, after the 2019 season. Okay, Cam's no longer there. Let's get Teddy. All right, that was okay, but let's try and get something better. Sam Darnold, that didn't work out. Let's find the next guy. Chasing losses. Then finally they were down low on chips and they went all in on Bryce. And guess what? Nothing. The cards didn't turn over in your favor on a pretty high risk bet. What are you doing going forward now as a franchise? I put a ton of this in the future now on Dan Morgan as GM. I really do.
I would hope that before the season even started that they had that conversation. That this was something that at least came up. Hey, what if we start this year and Bryce doesn't look good?
Yeah.
What if we start this year and Bryce gets injured? What if we start this year and Andy Dalton looks better in training camp? What is the plan?
Mm-hmm.
And I would hope, I know that Panthers of the past, Panthers brass of the past, I don't think they really talked about that. I don't think that was even really a thing. It didn't feel like there was a real plan with Fitterer and Rule and Tepper and all that.
No, it was fly by the seat of your pants.
I would hope that Dan Morgan and Dave Canales and Brent Tillis and David Tepper have all had that particular conversation. This is the scenario. This is what we should do in this particular case. And I hope this is already covered. I hope they do have a plan for this. But I think that there's definitely a lot to look at when it comes down to Bryce Young.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you heard what Taylor Moton was saying in the locker room with him on Wednesday, but he was simply asked about Bryce Young's confidence. And Taylor Moton is a very well-spoken guy. Mm-hmm. He's sure about what he says.
Oh, yeah.
And he stopped. He paused. He said, Bryce's confidence. Like he was searching for the words. The way he answered that let me know that this is a confidence issue with Bryce Young. It's not ability. Everybody's talking about ability. It's confidence right now. And why is this confidence shot? Well, let's go back and psychoanalyze, right? And for the people who think I'm being a Bryce Young apologist, no, we got to talk about real stuff. Stop trying to give in to takes and all this other stuff. Let's have a real conversation about the human being of Bryce Young.
Mm-hmm.
Last year was probably one of the hardest years that any rookie quarterback ever had to go through.
True. That's not just us saying, that's a ton of people saying that.
Again, your coaching staff, forget all the other stuff about the offensive line and the wide receivers and all that. Your coaching staff didn't get along. Your quarterback's coach and your offensive coordinator and your head coach, who are all offensive-minded guys, were not all on the same page. There were guys who were going behind each other's back to tell on each other, to snitch on each other to David Tepper. You had play caller changed 4 times in your rookie career.
Mm-hmm.
A different voice in your ear telling you what to do, and also with different philosophies each time. That's got to be hard for anybody, especially imagine you just got out of college and you're doing the job that you really wanted to do, and you're going into a very shaky situation. Everything's hinging on you and what your performance is going to be. And oh, by the way, your head boss, but his guys underneath, his middle managers underneath, are all telling you different things what to do. Yep. So then when you were reporting back to your head boss, they're like, no, I didn't want you to do that, but he told me to do this. So then you go do what he says. And then the other person says, I don't like that. And now you don't know which way to your wires are all crossed.
Oh yeah.
And we haven't talked about the offensive line yet. And we haven't talked about the receivers yet. Bryce Young has some healing to do mentally. I don't think that he's a Heisman Trophy winner by accident. I don't feel like everything he's accomplished before the Carolina Panthers is an accident. Maybe he'll end up being like Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, where when he goes elsewhere, he's just going to explode. But if he stays with the Carolina Panthers, if they do it right, I still feel like there's something you can get out of this guy. I didn't quite agree with the benching now, but if guys like Richard Sherman and Steve Smith are like, this is the best thing for him actually right now, I'll listen to the guys who actually been out there on the field and actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I was surprised by it. I was surprised by the bench and how fast it was. And you talking about last year, all the voices that Bryce Young was hearing, that reminded me, I was just thinking, I remember my senior year in college. I played the college lacrosse. My senior year in college, I remember out in the middle of a game, I had my head coach telling me, hey, I need you to go do this. All right, got it. Defensive coordinator was telling me something opposite. And I was start doing that. I was just like, I was getting two different things. Coach was like, play him straight. One coach was like, just play it straight up, play it up normal. Another guy's like, hey, no, go shut that guy off. Go shut that guy off. I was a defenseman. And I'm like, well, he told me to play it straight. Like, no, go shut him off. I go shut him off. Like, what do you, I'm like, finally, I actually looked at both of them and said, you're telling me this, you figure it out, and I'll go do it on the field. I literally had to do that to my defensive coordinator and my head coach my senior year in college. So I understand what that feels like. Again, completely different scale, but the situation reminded me a lot of that. Yes. And I was hoping that with Canales coming in, one voice, but something clearly is not registering right now. Body language looks terrible. It looks bad. I mean, gosh, when he threw the interception on Sunday, you and I were there, Chris. I mean, we looked up on the TV. We're like, I thought the dude was going to cry. Like, dude, like, you threw a pick. I'm like, yeah, find the swagger. Quit being so damn nice to people, Bryce. That's why I want to tell him, like, dude, you're too nice. Quit being so nice to people. Talk some trash out there on the field. I don't care what it is. If someone makes a joke about your height, be like, yeah, well, if I stand on my fat stack of a wallet, I'm going to be taller than you. I don't care what it is that you got to do to get some of that swagger back. Quit being so nice. Yeah. Take control of this situation going forward and show something. Show something. I've said no excuses for the guy. It's on him. He's got to show something.
And just trying to quickly psychoanalyze, right? Because the person that he's going to be always compared to is going to be C.J. Stroud. Sure. C.J. Stroud has gone through adversity in his life. His dad is still locked up. He didn't have the type of upbringing that Bryce Young had. They're both very talented quarterbacks who grew up in similar area and both grew up in California, that type of thing, right? C.J. Stroud has already lost certain things. Now, again, I don't know Bryce's personal life, but from the outside looking in, 2-parent household, very well spoken. Look, I think his parents were decent earners, so he doesn't necessarily, I'm not saying he's rich or anything, but he didn't necessarily need to be in football. He would have been fine having, he didn't need football to save his family, right? And that's a completely different pressure that some people are flying under. C.J. Stroud is using his platform to talk about his father and other people who've been wrongly convicted and who are currently serving sentences and things like that. There are things he's gone through. So when he goes out on that field, he's experienced more pressure already than that. This is nothing to him. His dad is not accessible right now, right? Bryce, we talked about it before. He hasn't gone through anything yet. This is it. So now we get a chance to see how he responds to it. And as of Wednesday, his teammates said he was attentive in practice. He's been attentive in the meeting room. He's still been a leader. Adam Thielen said he's not a captain for nothing. He's still the captain, one of the captains on this team, and we voted him as such, and there's a reason why. As of right now, we're making this move because of the chances it gives us to win Sunday. But this guy is still going to be something. And so, listen, people, you can go back to 99.9 The Fans, go through the videos. Before this show even existed, Dennis and I did some radio together. We also did a show called Culture State together. Yep. We were talking about this draft, and there's video evidence of this if you go down deep enough in our archives here on 99.9 The Fan. We both wanted C.J. Stroud, right? So
we
for the people,
Frank Reich.
We for all the people who just felt like, and then also just after the college football playoff, after I saw the way he, performed then, I was like, oh, I'm sold on him. That's the guy I want the Carolina Panthers to get. We've said this on radio and it's out there. It's boom.
I'm excited about it.
Who do you think they take?
Number one?
Yeah.
I'm still on the CJ Stroud bandwagon.
You think they take Stroud?
But, I mean.
Now, who you want? Who do you think they take?
Who I think? I don't know. Who I think? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
This is not an exact science. So, like, I don't know who they're going to take. That burden is on them. Who I want? CJ Stroud. I'm going to go back to the CFP. He really impressed me against Georgia. But we also trusted what we saw with Bryce Young, so we weren't down on it. So there's definitely something there. It's now going to be up to Bryce Young to pull that out and just get that confidence back. Sometimes you just need to sit down and just clear your head sometimes.
Sit down, just take a deep breath, man. Sit down, take a deep breath. And you know what? I remember, locally where we live in Raleigh, we have the Carolina Hurricanes. And look at the year that, for example, Seth Jarvis just had this past year. One of their forwards just signed a big fat 8-year contract extension just a matter of weeks ago. He put up 33 goals, 34 assists, 67 points. His rookie year came in, he made the team as a rookie. Rod Brindamore had to sit him for a stretch of games.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't playing well, like trying to do too much pressure on himself, all those things. Mental reset, now he's flourishing. Maybe that works for Bryce. And here's the thing. A lot of people, again, may call us Bryce apologists. Here's the thing that I think people may misunderstand. The reason why we want Bryce to be successful is because if Bryce is successful, that means the Panthers are successful. And if the Panthers are successful, that means wins. And that's the thing we care about most, wins for this team. That's what we want. So if Bryce was the guy, fine, I'm all in on Bryce. If it was CJ, then fine, I'm all in on CJ. And I know some people will bring up, yeah, well, Bryce had Alabama talent and all that stuff around him. One of the big knocks going into the draft about CJ Stroud was he had Marvin Harrison Jr. and Chris Olave and Jackson Smith and Jigba, all first-round picks. And you and I had the conversation saying that should not be held against him. We had that conversation literally in the spring of 2023 before the draft. You and I had that conversation.
Yes.
So it's like you can't say one guy was propped up because of whatever. I will say this, though. If it works for Bryce here, awesome. And if it doesn't, I hope you figure it out as soon as possible. Because if he's not your guy, and if Bryce can't figure it out, this is on him to figure it out. If he can't figure it out, we're right back to square one. We're right back to square one.
Let me ask you something, Dennis.
All right.
At the age of 23, I assumed you've always been awesome. I didn't know you back when you were 23.
Well,
But how did you handle tough situations at 23 versus how you handle them now at your age?
I was 22. This was before my 23rd birthday. This is 09. 09 is when I turned 23. Before that, February of 09, I got laid off because the economy hated itself at the time. It was during the recession.
Man, I
got laid off.
I got laid off in May 09. And I just turned 23.
Yeah, so I had to deal with that. Like, I had to deal with job loss.
Yeah.
And I had to, try and figure it out. I mean, gosh, I'm 38 years old now, still trying to figure some stuff out. But, yeah, it was boom, hit you in the face. I hadn't even been graduated from college for a year. Boom, smacked in the face. Wow, I'm laid off. I've worked years to get a journalism degree.
Yeah.
And then to get into this situation, now I'm like, it just, boom, carpet ripped out from under me. It's like, okay, you had to be proactive. You can't sit and sulk. Yeah, I have my day to cry. I had to call mom, had to call dad, called my sister, have my time to cry. All right, now I got to go forward because what's done is done. Yeah. What's taken from me was what was taken from me. Yeah. The only thing I can do is march forward. I might only take a half a step today. I might take 2 steps today. I might even go anywhere, but I got to go forward. Simple as that. Whatever that meant at that time was just going forward.
Bryce is 23 years old, man. He just turned 23 in July, at the end of July. So I think it was the first day of training camp actually, because I think I remember us saying happy birthday to him while we were there. Let's take that into account, right? And honestly, I'm just gonna be real. This isn't about Bryce in particular. This is about how we treat quarterbacks when it comes down to the NFL. Again, Peyton Manning sucked his first year and a half, 2 years in the NFL. He's one of the all-time greats right now. You look at Patrick Mahomes, who was able to sit for a year and learn. Jordan Love just got a big fat contract off of playing a year because he sat for 3 years and so he could learn. There's something to that. Again, not everybody is going to come out and have a Cam Newton first game in the NFL. And let's just keep it hot. Cam Newton also had Steve Smith. He had Greg Olsen and Jeremy Shockey and D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart on that same team. And Jordan Gross was there protecting his blind side. Like, he had a squad and he was able to do that. What squad does Bryce Young have? Not apologizing for him.
No.
Tell me about the squad Bryce Young had.
The situation's the situation.
And so here's the thing. Like, we have to really take this into account. We throw around that B word way too soon on guys. Again, look at Sam Darnold. This baller right now. And he has Justin Jefferson. But he has Justin. When is the last time he had a Justin Jefferson caliber wide receiver to throw to?
On a tier down, he had DJ Moore.
A tier down.
Yeah.
When is the last time he had a Justin Jefferson tier receiver to throw to? Okay, then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
it helps.
And also he had a chance to have a year where he under Mr. Kyle Shanahan over there and chill and learn some stuff and be protected and watch what winning looks like, and then go over to Minnesota with another good coach and implement it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why guys are thriving when they're not with the Carolina Panthers. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so, clearly the Panthers can see talent, but can they actually use and develop that talent? That's why I'm not willing to throw out the B word. And again, I'm not apologizing for him, because I just said earlier, go back, sift through, go back to spring 2023. Dennis and I were both saying, get CJ Stroud. But Bryce Young is Bryce Young for a reason. And I'm not ready to throw him out yet. I'm not ready to throw him out yet.
Yeah.
As far as him in general, will he work with the Carolina Panthers? I don't know. But in general, he could still be a good player.
Well, I hope that we on Sunday get to see Andy Dalton. And Andy Dalton knows how to win. He's done a ton in the NFL. On the road at Vegas. Let's see what the offense looks like. And you always get, and we'll kind of wrap up on this, Chris. You always kind of get, when you change a head coach, you go to the interim, you kind of sometimes get that that one game bump, right? Like that one or maybe 2 games. You kind of get that all right, man, we got the backup quarterback. I'm going to hold that block a little bit longer. All right, I'm going to try and dig on that route a little bit, harder, whatever it is. You kind of get that bump. I expect to see that on Sunday. I fully expect to see that. Now, question is, how long will it sustain? How long will it sustain if we see that bump? We saw a bump, remember a couple of years ago when Steve Wilkes came in? We saw the initial push, and that actually sustained. That's not an easy thing that happens in the NFL. Heck, Antonio Pierce, the coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, had that bump when he came the interim head coach, and it's kind of sustained a little bit. Now, they're still trying to figure stuff out as an organization. That's a completely different conversation, but I expect a little bit of a bump on Sunday, Chris, and I just want to see this team be competitive. It's what I want. I just want to see this team be competitive.
I expect a little bit of a bump too. No Diddy.
Carolina Ford Dealers, your sponsor of Panthers Playbook with the Ford F-150 on your team. It's game on wherever you go, whatever you do. With the power and technology of a Ford F-150 on your team, it's game on.
Baby oil.
Leave the comments. We'll see you guys on Sunday.